I'm Allison Vanstone, Dean at Virginia Commonwealth University in Qatar. Good evening to our honored guests, faculty, staff, students, and our friends of VCU Qatar. It is our pleasure to welcome you to the opening of the second Hamad bin Khalifa Symposium on Islamic Art, Rivers of Paradise, Water in Islamic Art and Culture. Celebrating our 10th year in 2008, in partnership with the Qatar Foundation and as a member of Education City, we are honored to host this event as a continued expression of our commitment to outstanding and relevant art and design education in Qatar. Please enjoy this unique opportunity to hear and to interact with international experts on Islamic art. I would now like to introduce Mr. Vice Chairman, Dr. Saif Al-Hajara.
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. أيها الحفل الكريم، بالأصالة عن نفسي وبالإنابة عن صاحبة السمو الشيخة موزة بنت ناصر المسند، يطيب لي ويشرفني أن أرحب بكم بتحية الإسلام، فالسلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. أيها الحضور الكرام، جاء الإسلام بالشمولية، جاء ليؤكد رسالة البشر جمعاً، وجاء بالمعرفة، وجاء بكل ما يحيط بالإنسان في الماضي والحاضر وما يستجد في المستقبل. والفن كان أيضاً حاضر في هذه الرسالة. وكما نعلم، هناك مدن وقرى وصحاري ومتاحف غنياً بحضارة الإسلام، وجاءت هذه الرسالة لتؤكد أن الفن جزء لا يتجزأ من حياة الإنسان، وهذا تأكيد على اهتمام مؤسسة قطر بالفنون الإسلامية، كون نقف تقديراً وإجلالاً لهذه الفنون. فخصصت مؤسسة قطر كرسي حمد بن خليفة ليعم الفائدة في أقطار العالم، بدءاً بالشرق وانتهاءً بالغرب. وحضوركم اليوم مع نخبة متميزة من المتخصصين في الفنون الإسلامية تأكيداً على أهمية الفنون الإسلامية. ولا شك هذا الجمع الطيب من المختصين والمهتمين والباحثين وطلبة العلم سيثري ويزيد كثير من مفاهيمنا في مكنونات هذه الحضارة العريقة الشاملة الجامعة. وهنا أوجه الشكر إلى عميد ورئيس جامعة فيرجينيا كومنولث في ريشموند على اهتمامهم بالفنون الإسلامية، كما أوجه أيضاً الشكر لعميدة كلية VCU في دولة قطر على جهودها الطيبة في إحضار لهذا المؤتمر. ولا شك الشكر موصول لكل من لبى الدعاء ولبى الدعوة للوصول إلى دولة قطر وإثراء علمه وثقافته. ولا شك هنا أيضاً أوجه الشكر إلى الإعلام لدوره أيضاً في نقل هذه المناقشات إلى أبعد من حدود المدينة التعليمية. وهنا أيضاً أؤكد اهتمام دولة قطر بالفنون الإسلامية، وقد قررت إنشاء متحف الإسلامي نأمل إن شاء الله جميعاً نحتفل بافتتاحه في الشهور القليلة القادمة. وهنيئاً لكل من يعمل من أجل إثراء هذه الثقافة، وأتمنى لكم إقامة طيبة في دولة قطر، وأتمنى لكم أيضاً إثراء لمحاور جلسات هذا المؤتمر. والسلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته.
Thank you. Please join me in welcoming Dr. Richard Toscan, our Vice Provost for International Affairs, Virginia Commonwealth University, Richmond, Virginia.
Good evening and welcome to the second Hamad bin Khalifa Symposium in Islamic Art. Your Excellencies, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, I welcome you to the 2007 Symposium in Islamic Art, one of the world's leading symposia in the field now. The symposium was conceived and established by His Highness Sheikh Hamad bin Khalifa Al Thani, the Emir of Qatar. It is the intention of His Highness that the Hamad bin Khalifa Symposium be presented every year by every 2 years by Virginia Commonwealth University. For the past 10 years, Virginia Commonwealth University School of the Arts in Qatar has brought design, vision, and excellence to Education City and the state of Qatar. Building on the reputation and success of its home campus in Richmond, Virginia, VCU Qatar honors its illustrious history while forging a tradition of design excellence in the Gulf region. Established in 1997 by Virginia Commonwealth University and the Qatar Foundation, VCU Qatar was the first elite institution invited to Education City. Our alumni have proven that we successfully achieve our mission. They are realizing their full potential as informed, productive design professionals and citizens with a lifelong commitment to learning and service. VCU Qatar serves the local, national, and international communities by providing excellence through its research and scholarly activities, its diverse educational programs, and its public service activities. Congratulations to VCU Qatar's faculty, staff, students, and alumni on your 10th anniversary. Dr. Sheila S. Blair and Dr. Jonathan M. Bloom, the organizers of the symposium, are among the leading scholars of Islamic art in the world and hold the Hamad bin Khalifa Chair in Islamic Art in the Department of Art History at Virginia Commonwealth University. They also hold the Norma Jean Calderwood Chair of Islamic and Asian Art at Boston College. Both earned the PhD from Harvard University, where they studied under the great scholar of Islamic art, Dr. Oleg Grabar. Doctors Blair and Bloom collaborate as co-authors on many of their books, and these have become standard references and textbooks in the field of Islamic art. Their work has been recognized by the College Art Association Maury Award, the Albert Hourani Book Award of the Middle East Studies Association, twice by the British Kuwait Friendship Society Book Prize, and the Bahari Prize for the best book on Persian civilization. Publishers of their books are among the leaders in the field, including Yale University Press, Oxford University Press, Edinburgh University Press, and the Noor Foundation with Oxford University for work on the Nasser D. Khalili collection of Islamic art. In addition to teaching at VCU in Richmond, Doctors Blair and Bloom also present lectures on Islamic art at VCU Qatar and serve as the organizers of the biennial Hamad bin Khalifa Symposia in Islamic Art and edit publications drawn from the symposia for international distribution. The proceedings of this symposium will be published by Yale University Press at a date to be announced. Dr. Bloom will introduce the Monday sessions. So for tonight, please join me in welcoming co-organizer of the symposium, Dr. Sheila Blair.
Ladies and gentlemen, let me first thank VCU Qatar, VCU in Virginia, and the Qatar Foundation for all the wonderful help and support we've had in putting together this symposium. It's been a long time in the planning, at least 2 years, and we have had nothing but support through all the ups and downs, as you all know, of putting together a large group project. I'd also like to thank the people of Qatar who have given us all a really warm welcome since we've been here. Some of us who've just arrived off the plane in time, and some of us who've been here for a few days already. It's my special honor tonight to introduce our keynote speaker, Carol Hillenbrand, who is Professor of Islamic History and Head of Middle Eastern and Islamic Studies at the University of Edinburgh. I've known Carol for a long time, and so I thought tonight, instead of reading the standard biography, which you have available in your program booklet, I would just offer a few personal comments as to why I think Carol is such a good historian. I can still remember the first time we met 25 years ago. Carol was wearing a dress made out of this material, which I recognized as a Liberty print based on a William Morris design made in the 19th century. And I thought, aha, a historian, a rare historian who has an interest in visual and cultural history. We've become great friends in the last 25 years. Our families visit back and forth. This is our Jonathan and me and our kids with Robert and Carol in front of their lovely house in Edinburgh. And they've come to visit us where we live in the United States. We've worked together on several projects, one of which was a 3-hour documentary for public TV in America called Empire of Faith. And you probably didn't know that Carol was a movie star. She stole the show. When she was discussing this building, Croc de Chevalier, Hisn al-Akrad, a great Crusader castle, probably the finest of all Crusader castles, or at least the best studied of all Crusader castles. Well, Carol didn't talk about its fortifications and how no one had ever taken it except by deceit. Instead, she concentrated on the people who were in that castle, what it must have felt like to be isolated, surrounded by hostile fire, most of the time in darkness, afraid all the time that you were going to run out of water or rations. She brought it to life. Educated at Oxford and Cambridge, Carol is very well versed in history. She knows Middle Eastern languages, more of them and better than most people I know. She just gave a little interview in Arabic. She knows Fusha. She can talk with the best historians about the fuqaha and the ulama and the ruasa. But she can also talk to the rest of us. She knows her chronicles. And I think everyone will know that because her book, The Crusades, Islamic Perspectives, won the 2005 King Faisal Prize, an unknown award to be given to a woman up until that time. But I don't think it's just these formal characteristics that make Carol stand out. There are two things that I think make her a paramount historian. One, she makes history not a string of facts and names and dates, but rather she talks about history as people. People who did things, people who made objects, people who inhabited spaces. And second, she communicates that knowledge to others. So please join me tonight in welcoming Carol Hillenbrand, our keynote speaker, who's going to talk about gardens beneath which rivers flow, the significance of water in classical Islamic culture. Carol.
May I first add my thanks to everybody involved in the organization of this wonderful symposium. And I'd like to thank the people who invited me. أريد أن أقول أيضاً إنني سعيدة جداً بسبب هذه الزيارة لمرة الأولى للمرة الأولى إلى هذه البلاد الجميلة، يعني دولة قطر. God preferred water over any other created thing and made it the basis of creation. As he said, "And we made every living thing of water." Then the water was told, "Be still." And it was still, awaiting God's command. This is limpid water, which contains neither impurity nor foam. Thus, the late 12th century Muslim writer Al-Kisai, in his famous work, Qisas al-Anbiya, The Tales of the Prophets, wrote about God's predilection for water before he began the creation of the world. Islam emerged in a desert land which thirsted for water and prized it as a rare and wonderful phenomenon. The early Muslim empire then conquered vast territories in which great civilizations had prospered, in the lush river valleys of the Nile, the Tigris, and the Euphrates, and eventually even the distant Indus. This lecture examines some of the many diverse roles played by water in the lives of medieval Muslims. I cannot hope to deal with all of these roles, since time is too short. For instance, I will not touch upon certain aspects of this enormous subject, such as irrigation machinery or the Islamic garden, since there will be experts on these topics here who will be giving presentations later in the symposium. I will therefore address the following themes. Firstly, water in the world of faith. Second, water in Islamic ritual. Third, the proper governance of water. 4, the place of water in Muslim geographical and scientific writings. And 5th, water in the sphere of imagination and symbolisms. The pictures that I will show will serve as a visual backcloth to the topics discussed. Please forgive me for not identifying them individually. There is no time for that. Let me begin, therefore, with my first theme, water in the land of faith. We have already heard from Al-Kisai of the importance of water in creation itself. He also speaks of God's placing his throne upon the surface of the waters, echoing the Quran, chapter 11, which says that when God created the heavens and the earth in 6 days, his throne, I quote, was upon the water. وَكَانَ عَرْشُهُ عَلَى الْمَاءِ. This verse is interpreted by early Muslim Quranic commentators, such as At-Tabari, to mean that God created water first, and that then, from it, he created heaven and earth. Water is also an intrinsic feature of paradise. The way in which paradise is represented in the Quran is entirely appropriate for a revelation coming to a desert people. Images of water and greenery abound. Fountains, rain, cool rivers, in pure and righteous gardens. The waters of paradise deserve special attention. In the chapters of the Quran revealed at Medina, there is mention of rivers, anhar, in paradise. There is also an allusion in chapter 108 to the heavenly water of Al-Kawthar, after which the chapter is named. According to the Prophet's biographer, Ibn Ishaq, the Prophet Muhammad regarded Al-Kawthar as the name of a river in paradise. Al-Kawthar was shown to the Prophet Muhammad when he performed his ascent into the heavens, the Mi'raj. At-Tabari says that its waters are whiter than snow and sweeter than honey. The wonders of Al-Kawthar extend to its banks, which are of gold. Several Quranic verses, and especially chapter 9, promise the believers gardens beneath which rivers flow, wherein they will abide forever. These rivers will flow beneath them in the gardens of delight. Al-Anhar fi Jannat an-Na'im. Mention of named rivers is only the beginning. In paradise, there are, as Al-Kisai writes, endless vistas of rivers stretching out into infinity. Rivers, the number of which only God knows, for they are more numerous than the stars in the sky. What wonderful imagery for the Arabs from the arid deserts of Arabia to savor. Angels have a clear link with water. In one of his works, the prolific religious scholar As-Suyuti, who died in 911 Hijri, 1505 AD, this prolific scholar assembled a collection of over 700 sayings about angels. These sayings are a mixture of exegetical and folkloric material, and they reveal a clear association between the angels and rain. One such saying says, "Every day the angel Gabriel is immersed in Al-Kawthar, and then he shakes himself. Every raindrop is created from an angel." Water is also a sign of God's beneficence to humankind. There are many references in the Quran to rivers, rain, and fountains. These symbolize God's benevolence towards his creatures. God can rain abundant water on those who worship him aright, such as the pre-Islamic Arab prophet Hud. Chapter 11 of the Quran. He will cause the sky to rain abundance on you. Yursilu as-sama alaykum midraran. When Noah's message is rejected by his people, God assists him. Chapter 54. We opened the gates of heaven with a flood of water. The healing and miraculous powers of water are illustrated by the tale related by Al-Kisai of how Jesus performs a miracle by praying and sprinkling water on the tomb of Noah's son Shem, who emerges then alive and well from the tomb after 4,000 years. Conversely, water can be a sign of God's punishment. Muslims are reminded that it is God who created the heavens and the oceans from rain. He can, if he wills, also use the rain to inflict a deadly punishment, to destroy mankind in a cataclysmic inundation. The sea, as portrayed in the Quran, can be a terrifying symbol of God's retribution on those who disbelieve. Chapter 24 tells us that the deeds of the wicked are like, I quote, darknesses in an open sea, covered in waves, upon which are waves, upon which are clouds, darknesses piled one upon the other. It's important for the faithful to recall that it is God who gives and it is he who can take away. Chapter 56, consider the water which you drink. Was it you that brought it down from the rain cloud, or we? If we had pleased, we could make it bitter. This is a clear warning to the believers that they are not in charge of God's creation. They must look after it properly, as God has entrusted them with it. Water figures largely in the stories of the prophets, usually in a didactic or minatory sense. Take the case of Noah again. God's guiding of Noah's ark to safety is a symbol of his benevolence towards man, to whom he has given the gift of seafaring. The sea on which Noah sailed was terrifying, amid waves like mountains. Fi mawjin kal jibali, chapter 11. But God is all-powerful over the waters, in the heavens and in the earth, and can make the waves abate, as he did for Noah. Chapter 11. And it was said, O earth, swallow your water. O sky, be cleared of clouds. And the water was made to subside. The Quranic story of Noah is a clear illustration of the transience of life and of man's delusion in thinking that he is master of the world. A powerful contrast is drawn between Noah and his believing companions in the ship, whom God saves, and those who denied God's revelations, who are drowned. Chapter 10. In the well-known story of Joseph, a similar difference is emphasized between God allowing the children of Israel to cross over the sea and the dreadful fate awaiting Pharaoh and his hosts, who pursued them in rebellion and transgression. God's terrifying punishment overwhelmed them when drowning overtook them. I now move to my second theme, namely the place of water in Islamic ritual. Here, purity plays a central role. The Prophet Muhammad is reported to have made a number of important statements about purification. Let me give you two. When a believer washes his face during ablution, every sin he contemplated with his eyes will come forth from his face, along with the water. When he washes his hands, every sin they wrought will come forth from his hands with the water. When he washes his feet, every sin toward which his feet have walked will come out with the water, with the result that he will come forth pure from offenses. Prayer is like a stream of sweet water that flows past the door of each of you. Into it, he plunges 5 times a day. Do you think that anything remains of his uncleanness after that? The canonical collections of hadith, these sayings of the Prophet, contain special sections which emphasize the necessity of carrying out ritual ablutions before prayer, and which instruct the Muslim faithful in how to purify themselves properly. On a more metaphorical level is the water of Zamzam. Zamzam is a sacred well near the Kaaba in Mecca. Its miraculous origin is believed to have occurred when Hagar, the wife of Abraham, asked God for water to give to her son, Ismail. Gabriel came and hollowed out a place in the ground with his heel, and from it water sprang. In the pre-Islamic period, the Jahiliyyah, the well was filled in, but it was dug out again by the Prophet's own grandfather, who was led to the place by a raven. Muhammad's biographer, Ibn Ishaq, writes about the merits of Zamzam as follows. Zamzam utterly eclipsed the other wells from which the pilgrims used to get their water, and people went to it because it was in the sacred enclosure and because its water was superior to any other. The rites of the Muslim pilgrimage end with the drinking of Zamzam water. The word Zamzam is onomatopoeic. Its root apparently means abundant supply of water. And there is a tradition of the Prophet which says, the water of Zamzam is a remedy for anyone who suffers. Popular tradition has it that other holy wells, for example, the one in the Great Mosque at Kairouan in Tunisia, are connected underground with Zamzam. Zamzamiyat are small bottles which contain water from the sacred well, and pilgrims even today still take them home after they have performed the pilgrimage. The well of Zamzam is mentioned by Al-Kisai in connection with Joseph to show its miraculous powers. I quote, "When Joseph had washed and performed ablutions with the water, the earth itself shone from his beauty, and the light of prophethood gleamed from his eyes." My third theme concerns the proper governance of water. So pervasive was the concern with water in the arid land where Islam was revealed, that the Prophet Muhammad, when asked to name the act of greatest merit, is quoted as once replying, "To give people water." It's interesting to note that in Islamic law, animals have the right to drinking water in the same way as human beings do. Indeed, the Quran makes it clear that humans and animals are both dependent on God for water and life. The books of Hadith, the sayings of the Prophet, also contain precise examples showing how the Prophet recommended that water should be distributed to fellow Muslims, including travelers. One instance involved a dog which was panting and eating mud because of its extreme thirst. A man saw this, filled his shoe with water, and poured it over the dog. The Prophet praised this act, saying that there would be a reward for serving water to any animate being. The books of Hadith also preserve the prayers for rain, Salat al-Istisqa, performed by the Prophet. One such hadith exists in a number of versions. An especially detailed example is the following one, told by a contemporary of Muhammad, Anas bin Malik. A man stood in front of the Apostle of God, I'm quoting now, and said, "O Apostle of God, the livestock are dying and the roads are cut off. So please pray to God for rain." The Apostle of God, peace and blessings be upon him, raised both his hands and said, "O God, bless us with rain. O God, bless us with rain. O God, bless us with rain." Anas added, "By God, we could not see any trace of cloud in the sky. A heavy cloud like a shield appeared from behind the mountain. When it came into the middle of the sky, it spread and then rained. By God, we could not see the sun for a week." The verb istisqa can also mean to go in procession to ask for rain. And in Egypt, it signifies the making of public prayers to obtain a good Nile inundation. Both these extra meanings clearly demonstrate the central importance of water in the life of the Muslim community. Not surprisingly, the Fatimid caliphs of Egypt organized public celebrations when the Nile flooded. Islamic law devised intricate rules about water precisely because it was an all-important commodity. The Sharia identified 7 kinds of water which are lawful to drink, or with which it is permissible to perform ablutions. Water which comes from rain, snow, hail, springs, wells, rivers, and the sea. Incidentally, it is worth remembering that the Arabic root from which the word Sharia comes has as its original meaning to enter the water to drink in connection with an animal, a very ancient meaning. There is much discussion in the Sharia about ownership of water and about who may take it. Rules were formulated on the ownership and use of rivers, wells, and springs. Before Islam, the phrase Sahib al-Ma, the possessor of water, denoted a wealthy person. The provision of water to pilgrims going to the Kaaba shrine at Mecca was the prerogative of the Quraysh tribe to which the Prophet Muhammad belonged. This was a sign of prestige. And the practice of giving water to visitors was carried over and enshrined in Islamic law. There was a duty on those who owned sources of water to give some to those suffering from thirst. This kindness, even to the enemy defeated in battle, was common practice. 2 very famous but different scenes come to mind in this context. Firstly, the tragic plight of the Prophet's grandson Hussein at Karbala in 61 Hijri, 680 AD, when he appealed in vain to his opponents to spare his women and children from the pangs of thirst. According to Shiite belief, thirst caused the greatest suffering for Hussein, his family, and his followers at Karbala. Accordingly, as part of the Muharram commemorations in Shiite lands every year, the believers distribute water in memory of the thirst of Hussein and his family. A second episode involving the custom of giving water to the needy occurred in the tent of Salah ad-Din, Saladin, after his famous victory over the Crusaders at the Battle of Hattin in 583 Hijri, 1187 AD. Following long-standing Muslim practice, Saladin gave water to his defeated enemy, Guy, the king of Jerusalem. However, when Guy passed the water on to the infamous Arnat, Reynaud of Châtillon, Saladin refused to allow him to drink the water, and instead he struck him down with his sword. Here, Saladin's vow to God that he would personally kill this redoubtable yet treacherous enemy prevailed over the deeply ingrained Muslim habit of providing water to the needy. My next theme concerns the place of water in Muslim geographical and scientific writings. As a standard part of their work, medieval Muslim geographers give long descriptions of the seas and waters of the earth. From ancient times, water had a sacred, numinous role in the valleys of the two rivers, the Tigris and the Euphrates. Water was used for divination, and rivers, springs, and floods were consulted for omens. In the arid environment of the Middle East, water was the fundamental need, and early sites of human settlement were inevitably near sources of water, rivers, lakes, and streams. Rainwater was collected in reservoirs and cisterns, and the waters from rivers and lakes was exploited in elaborate irrigation systems. Underground water was located by oases and extracted through wells. Not surprisingly, for a civilization whose territories are so frequently arid, Muslim scientists followed with minute attention the factors that affected the rise and fall of rivers. The Nilometer in Cairo was intended to record the ebb and flow of the Nile over the years. The great Muslim scholar Al-Biruni, who died in the early 11th century AD, wrote an entire treatise on how water naturally flows to the center of the earth, and on the nature of springs, canals, water clocks, and lakes which are always full, or the columns in the great mosque of Kairouan, which always leak water on Fridays. There were even machines for washing your hands. In Iran, since Achaemenid times in the 6th century before Christ, when the system was described by Herodotus, the practice that government, even at local level, functioned as the distribution agent for irrigation had been familiar. After the coming of Islam, legislation on irrigation became very intricate. But it was always based on the principle embedded in the Sharia that water should never be bought or sold. It was the clear duty of the ruler to be the custodian of water supplies and to distribute them to his subjects. For this reason, the 8th century Umayyad Caliph al-Walid began diverting the course of the river Jordan, and his uncle, another Umayyad Caliph, the usually miserly Hisham, constantly dug canals. The famous Aghlabid water cisterns, placed outside the city of Kairouan in Tunisia, with their complex system of filtration, are nowadays a major tourist attraction. To this day, there are over 100 working water wheels in Syria, and they were exported as far west as Spain. The water wheels at Hama were first mentioned in 271 Hijri, 884 of the Christian era. Muslim scientists were extremely inventive in constructing and developing many kinds of hydraulic machines throughout the medieval period, and they wrote about them in technological treatises. The geographer Ibn Hawqal, writing about 10th century Al-Andalus, Spain, is full of praise for the irrigation system there. I quote, "The foreigner notices with admiration the universally well-cultivated fields and a hydraulic system which is coordinated in such a profoundly scientific manner that it created fertility in the seemingly least rewarding soils." Despite this emphasis on the urgent need for water to sustain agriculture on behalf of large populations in arid areas of the Muslim world, it should not be forgotten that on occasion, rulers and the wealthy urban elite would enjoy being near or on water for pleasurable activities such as parties and picnics. The 17th century Safavid ruler Shah Abbas II, for example, followed a tradition recorded 600 years earlier in the Qala of the Banu Hammad in Algeria, when he organized regattas in Isfahan, which he watched from his grandstand view in the middle of the Khwaju Bridge. The phenomenon of water is treated at length by al-Biruni in his remarkable work, Athar al-Baqiyah, Vestiges of the Past. Here he discusses mountains, rivers, and winds, and changes in weather month by month, drawing on legends, superstitions, and scientific fact. His book is a veritable mine of esoteric information. For example, he calculates that Jonah stayed in the belly of the fish for 22 days. He describes the air of the mountains of Tabaristan in Iran as being, I quote, "so moist that if people break and pound garlic on the tops of the mountains, rain is sure to set in." He singles out a particular day in November as being inauspicious for navigation. He speaks of a wind at the bottom of the sea. I quote, "The sea has certain days when it is in uproar, when the air is turbid, the waves roll, and thick darkness lies over it. Therefore, navigation is impracticable. People say that at this time there arises the wind at the bottom of the sea that puts the sea in motion. One thinks at once of a tsunami, doesn't one? And that, of course, brings us to the recording of natural disasters caused by water. For seas and rivers, though part of God's wondrous creation, can also present dangers to the lives of humans and animals alike. Poets would celebrate these occasions, describing how the Tigris became a whirlpool, reaching the very ramparts of the city of Baghdad. The 14th century Persian poet Nasir al-Bukhari describes one such flood. I quote, "The Tigris this year had a wonderful drunken gait, its feet in chains and its hand to its lips. Was it out of its mind?" The Christian Arab chronicler of the 13th century, Bar Hebraeus, Ibn al-Ibri, narrates another dramatic story about the flooding of the Tigris in the 11th century. This endangered the very life of the caliph himself. Quote, "When the waters rose up under the bed of the caliph, he fled to the door, and a eunuch carried him out and placed him in a boat. The caliph himself was for 2 days unable to find anything to eat, and the lions and the buffaloes were seen together on the top of the hills, with the waters surrounding them, and being utterly stupefied, they did not harm each other." Arab seafaring skills were famous in the Gulf and the Indian Ocean. Their maritime history is reflected in the practical details of the famous Geniza documents. This rich treasure house of Jewish and Muslim documents from medieval Cairo provides many valuable insights into maritime trade and seafaring undertaken by both Jews and Muslims, especially in the 11th century, to faraway lands such as South Arabia, East Africa, and India. Such men encountered terrifying dangers and obstacles at sea: storms, sand reefs, rocks, and pirates. But they embarked on their voyages nonetheless. They did not undertake such journeys out of a sense of irresponsibility and foolish yearning after adventure. They had to make a living, and they needed to plan carefully. Ships often broke into pieces or foundered. They could not leave port until there was a full complement of passengers and goods, and until a favorable wind blew. The risk of shipwreck was high. Not surprisingly, medieval Muslim sources are full of stories of those at sea crying out to God to rescue them. But Muslim sailors emerge from a wide range of sources as courageous, enterprising, and capable of braving the terrors of the oceans. So the idea that medieval Muslims had an antipathy to the sea needs some modification. Nor should one forget the role of boats for transport in marshes, and in agriculture